we're being experimental in terms of how we reach audiences.
So you're going to rest now, right?
No.
There is a thing that I wanted to mention.
I knew whatever you were going to say was going to be a surprise. I knew that.
Fala galera, Marcelo Forlani aqui. Temos no estúdio dois convidados especialíssimos. Os irmãos Russo, Anthony and Joe, thank you so much for coming to Omelette Studio.
Thank you for having us.
It's amazing. It's such an honor to have you guys here. It's not your first time here in Brazil. You came to CCXP. We own CCXP. We do that.
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. The passion at that event was
you always talk about
amazing.
the fan art.
Yeah, the beautiful, there was just beautiful fan art. That's what I was most struck by, other than the excitement of the crowd. Gorgeous work. And I was, anyway, special place.
Thank you so much. And here with us, we have Giovanna and Gaveta. We're gonna.
Hello. How are you?
Here, I'm not Gaveta, I'm drawer.
Yeah. Drawer.
Yes. That's what it means in English.
Yeah, it's direct translation.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very easy peasy chat. We're here just as friends and as fans to talk about Electric State. It's just out. Thank you so much for bringing this and talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Let me start with this. I saw two scenes of Brazil during the
that's
movie.
Right. Yes.
Lapa and then the Christ Redeemer.
Yes.
And there was a thankful for some studio here in Brazil who did that.
Yes.
How was to pick which city you would?
I mean, we just wanted to make sure that it felt as global as possible, and then sometimes we pick our favorite places.
But we scouted a lot. We looked at a lot of images, and those just ended up being the most sort of exciting for us, for the story. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you, because usually I get this impression that nowadays we don't have a center, obviously, but we do have cell phones, and we are always on our cell phones. I mean, sometimes I catch myself watching a movie or a series and we feel the urge to be with our cell phones or even in a dinner, a lunch with friends, like being here and talking to people and feeling this urge to be on our cell phones. And that is sad. And when I was watching The Electric State, I felt an immersive universe. I was compelled by the story and I didn't feel the urge, not even once, to touch my cell phone.
That's great.
And
That's really cool.
I mean, it's kind of the monologue of Michelle at the end of the movie.
Of course.
That it was really similar to real life because after all, we don't have centers, but we do have cell phones. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about the work of expanding this universe because I read The Electric State and it's not an easy graphic novel to bring to life. I mean, visually, yes, but in terms of narrative, no. So I just wanted to know the challenges of exploring this world and bringing this world to life.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's a denser, more obtuse tone to the book. It's a beautiful book. It's amazing. The themes are incredible in the book. You look at the cover and you understand immediately what he's trying to convey. And it is themes about technology addiction, which was what we grabbed onto from the book. We also feel like the generation most exposed to technology and the most vulnerable to it is the younger generation. So we wanted to transition the tone of the novel so that we could open it up to a wider audience because we wanted to make sure that kids saw the movie. In general, we're not trying to demonize technology. It's done a lot of amazing things for us. We all use it every day to do really good things with it. It can cure diseases. It can help us in many ways that are very important. It's also very dangerous and it's highly addictive. Right. And we have corporations that create technologies that keep us addicted to our phones. That's what your impulse is to always look at it is you're getting addicted to stimulation, dopamine, information. As those are the things that are driving you to want to pick it up. So when you put it down, hopefully with the movie, maybe it's that subtle idea of the neurocasters and this idea that maybe they're sucking your brain out of your head and turning you into somebody that, isn't really going to function in real life. You're going to have some proxy functioning for you. That was what we loved about the book was this notion that look, this is a highly exaggerated world, but it's actually not that far from where we are right now.
Yeah. But to your point, it is very much like we were thinking about exactly that, our relationship with the phone, and our children's
kids.
relationship with the phone. But it's boring to make a movie about somebody's relationship with their phone. So we came up with this fantasy world, and you can see again, even in that cover image from Simon Stålenhag, he's dealing with a very interesting, complicated relationship between technology and humanity. And so that's how we sort of ended up finding the story in there.
And just to follow that up, we know that lots of people are going to watch it close to their phones. How do you prepare a movie like this to make them away, to keep them away for their phones? Do you have to I've heard that there is like a rule today for streaming or for TV to have 15-second scenes, very quick scenes, so you can keep the attention of the watchers all the time.
They try to look. Two things. One is that's true because, as you say, I mean, think of the last time you watched something where you didn't check your phone, you didn't check your emails, you didn't get on a computer, and then think about the generation younger than you.
Even worse.
Even worse, right? Sometimes they have 2 screens and what they're watching, right? Yeah. And it's an addiction to ADHD. It's sort of this compulsory need for constant stimulation. I think these things drive anxiety and then also act as like a pacifier for anxiety. That's where you get in that addiction loop with them, right? Streamers for sure understand the fact now, and they have a tough time overcoming it, that they serve as like a secondary. Listen, I don't know the last time you're in a movie theater. I also see it in movie theaters. I mean, how many times are you in a movie theater and you look and there's 14 people on their phones while you're watching, or the screen is glowing and you're trying to sit. So it's everywhere you go, like dinner. The last time you were at a dinner, you looked around the restaurant and half the people
just
are on their phones with their friends.
Even children with iPads, watching stuff,
It's not something you can ignore or pretend like it doesn't exist or try to rise above. It exists and it's predominant. So streamers, I think they ask questions like that. I don't know that anybody understands how you make a story like that sort of tries to compensate for lack of attention span. Yeah, it's almost impossible. Yeah. All you can do is try to make a thoughtful, compulsory story that's going to keep you as engaged as possible.
I mean, that's really what our response is, just to try to make a really compelling story filled with really compelling actors, really compelling characters, and just a complex world that you want to take in. That's sort of our effort, so to speak. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what drives you to choose a story like this? I believe it's a vision. You see a story, say, "Oh, I'm have a good vision about this story." What drives you into a story? Not just this one. Every story you pick for telling.
It's usually theme or character.
Yeah,
it's one of those two.
And why is it speaking? Why are those themes or those characters speaking to you in this moment? What is it about right now? Like, we think about our personal lives a lot, and we also think about our collective lives a lot, all of us.
Right.
Everything we're experiencing together globally, like, what are those things that we're struggling with? What do we have anxieties about?
This guy. Right? Character.
Who's coming for us? You know?
But those are the things that get us excited. The theme of this got us very excited. The artwork's incredible because it conveys a haunting theme. The question is then, how do you translate that to an audience and not just a niche audience, right? Right. There's a version of this movie that's very faithful to the graphic novel, but it's going to be a very niche film for a very specific audience. You know?
And since you mentioned Doom, I have a big question regarding adaptations. I mean, you work with comics, you work with graphic novels, and now you're working on a big adaptation that you've once worked before that regards superheroes and comic books that have, here in Brazil, we call them arcos. I guess in the United States, it's also arcs, different stories.
Yeah.
So how is the challenge of adapting something, also putting your insights and also changing some things, but knowing that you have a public to pleasure, there is a public that is expecting something of it, the Electric State, Marvel content. So how do you put your insights in an adaptation, but without letting the fans upset. You know?
Well, the way I think the way we do it generally is the reason why we choose to work with from a source material is because there's something in that source material that is speaking very strongly to us, that we find really valuable and really interesting, that we're motivated to like explore. So part of the way we protect the source material flows simply from the fact that we love the source material.
Mm-hmm.
Like we value, like we're using it for a reason because we love it, what it's doing. So there's that core to it. But we also, on top of that, we also look at it as our job, like, well, why is it personally speaking to us? And then also we look at it as, you know, a graphic novel or a novel or artwork, it's not the same thing as a movie. They're different forms, right? And they're able to do different things, communicate with us in different ways. Mm-hmm. We look at it as our job. Well, we have to figure out, how does this work as a film? What is the most interesting thing we can do with it as a film? Like Simon's done the most interesting thing he could do with it as a book, a graphic novel. But what can we do with it as a film? And we look at it as our job to, like, if you love that book, you have that book. Mm-hmm. That book exists forever. Mm-hmm. You can look at it anytime you want. It's our job to try to bring something new to it, new to what that expression is. And we've always done that with the comics as well.
We have to live with it for 3 years or 4 years while we make it. So we have to love it more than anything. Mm-hmm. And people are always going to get upset. There's a conflict culture, right? Like everybody's upset every day and they're shouting it at you all day long on social media, right? So if you're trying to predict whether people are going to be upset, yes, they're going to be upset, right? The question is, like, if you try to service the fans, and that's all you think about, you're invariably going to disappoint some segment of them because they all don't want the same thing. Mm-hmm. So again, all we ever do is try to make the movie that we want to watch, and then we give that to the world, and we hope other people want to watch it.
We had to confront that issue very directly when we were making Captain America: Winter Soldier. Uh-huh. So it was the first time we were working with the Captain America character. Marvel had made the movie. We weren't involved with Captain America: First Avenger. There's many different versions of that character, Captain America, that have existed through the 70 years of comics that he's existed in. And people respond to different versions. Everybody's got their own favorite version of the character. The first movie, The First Avenger, was kind of an homage to the Golden Age version of Captain America, the very sort of straightforward, simple version of the character. We gravitate to a different version. Mm-hmm. And we just had to sort of say, well, this is the character that we love, that we respond to, and that we have to commit to. And so you got a very different version of Captain America and Winter Soldier. But yeah, there's inevitably... there's going to be somebody's favorite version. Mm-hmm. It's just, you know.
I got to say, this is my favorite movie.
Oh, that's sweet.
And not just because you're here. I always say that.
That's cool.
Me too. I always say that. You're talking about a vision of the story, but you always agree with the vision of the story, or sometimes you disagree how you work that out?
I mean, let me just add one thing regarding that. You said that you always do something that you want to watch first. Who's your first audience? Is like each other?
Yeah, I mean,
that is part of the process.
We're we're a collaboration. We have been for 3 decades, right? So we have to have some kind of joint Vulcan mind meld over what it is we're doing, or it's not going to turn out the way we want it. So we have to really enjoy the idea or the tone that we're exploring. Tone is everything. I really say tone is like the fingerprint of a filmmaker. We have a very weird tone. We've grown up with like very strange influences. You put the two of us together, it's even weirder. You know, we make odd choices. We're very self-aware as filmmakers. We kind of laugh at movies at the same time as we make them, because it all, you know, we're 2 kids from Cleveland, so the whole thing always seems a little ridiculous to us. Everybody's dressed up in costumes and makeup, and we're play acting, and, you know, lots of money is being spent, but ultimately we're very self-aware that we're making movies. So we like to wink a lot at the audience. We like to fuck around with the audience a little bit, throw in jokes, throw in weird things that, you know, are going to, you know, create hopefully like excitable moments for, you know, people if they catch them, or, you know, so we're specific that way, but that's what our tone is, right? It's not everybody's cup of tea, but that's what we like to do.
And since you mentioned that, I was wondering because I know that you guys were big fans of Flash Gordon.
Loved it.
Also,
I've seen
Empire
it more
Strikes Back.
than any movie in my life.
It's amazing. We're also
Probably
big
90
fans.
times.
Yeah, and I felt some kind of Amblin entertainment vibe during watching The Electric State. So I wanted to know if you're are big fans of Amblin. If you have a favorite movie, did you used to watch it together? So how was it like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it was so important part of our lives when Amblin became very popular. When Spielberg was defining his tone and his style for the world. E.T. is a huge favorite of ours. We've seen that movie.
There's a
50
homage
times.
to E.T.
100%.
The first time,
when he shows up.
We were thinking about it a lot.
I mean, we wear our homages on our sleeve because it's like trying to invite people into the conversation. Hey, let's all have some fun. Everything's influenced by everything. There's thousands and thousands of stories that have been told two-dimensionally projected on a screen. It's not like anybody's going to do anything to sort of reinvent the idea of a 2-hour story. We've kind of seen them all at this point. So we try to have a little fun with like, come on into the tent with us. Remember this story, remember that story.
Yeah.
Now we're going to kind of set you off on a different story with a new set of characters. But it brings an emotional resonance to people. When they hearken back, like you say, Amblin, it puts you in a place.
Yeah.
That's just like a shorthand we use to get you ready for the story. Because we're so intertextual now. Everything is a conversation. Everybody's always talking about pop culture, nonstop.
Talking about going back to the 80s, during that time, it was very usual to have 90 minutes movies. Today is 2 hours long at least, sometimes even longer, 3 hours, 3.5, Brutalist, 3:45.
Yeah.
And I know you're also struggling with Doomsday, how long it would be.
Trust me, we're trying to figure out how to,
how do you define, how do you think about the duration of the story that you want to tell?
It's every movie is different, right? And it really is just unique to the movie. We just think about energy and flow. That's really what it is like, how are we want every scene to be tight. We want every scene to be compelling. We want every scene to sort of be necessary to the movie. If you pull it out and the movie doesn't make sense, then you need it. If you pull it out and the movie still makes sense, you don't need it. We're very hard on
I think
scenes.
there's an impact, though, from series on movies right now. And I think in 6 or 8 hours, right? And now that we're getting series that are competitive from a scale standpoint, a cash spend standpoint, a movie star standpoint, you can break traditional structure because you have 6 to 8 hours to do it. If you kill a character 4 hours into a show or 1 hour into a movie, where do you think the higher emotional investment is? 4 hours into a show. Because you have more of your time, your lifeblood, committed to watching that character, right? But if you extend the movie, then you can start to play around with emotional commitment to the length of the story. I just see it as like trying to eventize movies so that you feel like you're getting an experience that is equivalent to what you can do with, say, The Last of Us or any of these giant shows that are now trying to compete with theatrical event movies.
Joining these two last questions about length and tone, I think a strong point of view is tone. I really like your tone. You set a whole tone for the whole movie. I saw that even in the Avengers, you have all a very different course, and you bring it together. It sounds like a complete movie. It doesn't sound different parts. And I just want to know how you control this. It's a thing that you control on the set, like controlling the actor, how they can speak or not, or just a thing you do in the editing?
Yeah, I mean, look, tone is one of the things that as a filmmaker, you can make your movie most unique to you because everybody's got a different sensibility about tone. You can sort of, you can look at a plot and different people can interpret that plot differently, oftentimes based solely on tone. So tone is really important. We like a very complicated tone. We like mixing a lot of things together that sometimes don't seem like they should fit naturally together. That's kind of how we find sort of interesting, odd tones. We've always been drawn to that. And if I think to the degree that some of our stuff maybe seems unique and fun, it might be because of the fact we are successful with the tone. But that's something, we start with the script. You have to layer at every level. Mm-hmm. The script has to feel right in that tonal zone. You have to communicate with the actors really specifically so they understand what the tone is, what's too broad, what's too straight, what kind of energy do you like, what kind of sensibilities that we're thinking about in the beat, so they understand how we're trying to perceive it at the moment. I think it's all of those things together. It's difficult. It's one of the more difficult parts.
You're salting to taste, and it's thousands of decisions that you make over the life of a movie. We said to Pratt, we want you to look like a guy stuck in the 80s. He put on a wig, came out, we laughed our asses off and said, that's funny to us, right? And so we put him in a wig. Like, it's just choices that you make, Right. And there's thousands of them. That equals tone. That's why I always say it's a fingerprint, because nobody will make the same 1,000 choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when Gaveta brought the subject course, I caught myself thinking about the fact that you are the greatest persons when it comes to multi-characters. I mean, you guys deal with lots of characters, and I had to be honest with you. There are some projects of yours that I was thinking, okay, Infinity War, there are lots of characters. I don't know if it's going to work, because they have to approach so many characters and so many people, and you have to assemble them and bring them together. And that also happens with the Electric State,
right?
Because there are so many characters. There's Michelle, there's Kids, Ethan Skate, Bradbury, Herman, Cosmo, Mr. Peanut, humans, robots, and I was like, oh my God, I had the feeling that I liked everyone there. I felt like every robot and also human had their time on screen, and I could feel some empathy towards them. Also, as I felt during Infinity War and Endgame, you can pick lots of characters and bring an amazing story to them. So what is the challenging thing about picking all of these characters and giving them the right time on screen? I don't know, do you have a big family?
We do. We're a big Italian family.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right?
That's a big part of it.
We had lots of colorful characters in our family, and we like
lots of voices.
We like the soup that comes out of a collection of characters that they can make together. Mm-hmm. Right. We like the charisma and the energy that comes out of the conflict between those characters. It requires two things. One, you have to really love each of the characters so that you give them their identity and you love their identity and you find it singular. And the other is you have to be super disciplined, because when you're working on the script, you have to keep combing through the script from the point of view of each character. If you don't understand what the character wants in the story, they're not going to have shape, in the screen time that they have. The discipline's required because you only have so much screen time. So the more you pack in there, the more complicated it gets to make all the pieces work. But it's also what excites us and gets us out of bed is that challenge of trying to figure out. In Doomsday, oh boy, it's it's bigger than Infinity War. So the amount of time and energy we're spending combing through the script to make sure the personalities are all popping and everyone's getting their moments is really.
But we do really do that. We try to see the whole movie through the eyes of every single character. We take time in the script phase and do that and just look at the story through each character's eyes and figure out, well, how do we challenge this character the most? How do we have the most amount of fun we can have with this character? Because it's like we've always had this belief, it's not the amount of screen time a character has, it's what you do with it. You could do something really special with a little screen time if you think about what the opportunities are for that character in that moment. So,
because if you think about Secret Wars, it also has, a big amount of characters in the comics. So I was thinking there is another project that's coming with lots of characters.
You're making me nervous now. Yeah.
I bet it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be awesome.
It's fun because it's when I was 12, it's what I would want to see. I would want to see somebody take that level of swing, that that scale of ambition, and present me with something that I could get lost in and I could have emotional experience with. And, I could let my imagination run wild. That's that is the number one driving factor for us, is like, how do we make movies that the 12-year-old version of us sitting in a movie theater would be really excited to watch?
And talking about this huge number of this huge ensemble that you used to work with, there are also egos of each person, each artist, each actor. You have also to deal with that on the day by day.
Yeah.
And we saw at San Diego Comic-Con last year how big Robert Downey Jr. is.
Right. He's huge.
Everyone is talking about
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, he seems like a very cool guy to work with.
Yeah.
How do you deal? How do you balance what they want, what you want? And because we know that you have to, it's your final decision, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to create
I think,
space
yeah.
for everyone to be heard. They understand their characters better than we ever will. So you want to hear from them. You want them to contribute ideas to the storytelling, because they're always going to have authentic ideas, right? And we're thinking about 4,600 things, and they're thinking about one thing, right? And that singular focus really helps bring that character to life. And there's a reason Robert Downey is Robert Downey, because the level of his commitment to the choices, creative choices that he makes, are significant. You want to hear his ideas. Not all of them are right, but a lot of them are fucking spectacular, you know? So you have to, and then you have to steer him towards the ones that you think are right and away from the ones that maybe are going to take you in the wrong direction. But it's that collaboration that ends up creating the magic.
I would say this too, like it's that, in our relationship, the movie, because we both have egos, right? The movie has to be always bigger than either of us. The movie's always the biggest thing. So, if you approach the process with all of your collaborators, the movie is bigger than all of us. And at the end of the day, we're all serving the movie. And we have to figure out how we sort of play our part in shaping this movie. I think that's how we kind of maintain a balance.
Let me just follow that very quickly. And this movie has a very huge ensemble, as we were talking as well. And we know that to start a movie, usually you have one star first, then you got the green lights to follow that up. How did you pick each character here, each actor to be part of it?
In the Electric State, I mean, look at the movie is really centered on Michelle, the character of Michelle. So Millie was where we started.
Okay.
With her, and we started thinking about her very early in the process and shaping the character around her and for her. So you look at, there's not a lot of actors in her age range that can portray a teenage girl that have her level of experience. This is a very difficult role.
Maybe none.
Yeah,
Right.
none. I mean, look at what she has to do in this movie. There's comedy, there's extreme drama. I mean, it's like she
There's
has
absurdism,
enormous.
there's
She experiences enormous
humor.
loss in here in this movie. Yeah, there's humor. She's acting with robots who don't exist. It's very technically challenging as well. So she's in a unique place to be able to pull off a movie like this and build a movie on her shoulders. And then we went right to Chris Pratt after that, because that character is so important to the film. And we really needed, because Michelle is dealing with such emotional difficulties throughout the story, we needed to design a character that was one step removed from those things, that can carry more of a lighter energy throughout, even though Chris's character certainly has his complexities as well. So yeah, it's just kind of, it goes back to the tonal question almost. You're thinking about what tones do these actors bring to the movie, and how do they balance each other,
And mixing them together creates the,
And the nice thing is that Millie is kind of family, right? You guys,
We've known her for a long time.
Yeah.
My daughter and her were friends. We're friends with her parents, and they're lovely people.
Nice.
And, we've been super supportive of her. She's grown up in the business, not the easiest thing to do, especially for a girl. And we finally got the opportunity to work with her. We wrote the part for her, and we're grateful when we get to work with people that we love.
Yeah, I wonder if that thinking works for the other departments of the movie, like VFX. Because we are talking about movie with a lot of VFX, a lot of CGI.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of robots, a lot of spaces. And you gotta you got to trust your crew, your team. But how that worked for you? You just approve the highest level. You talk with the people who produces the CGI. Just
when you're world building, it takes a lot of time. So you have to, you have to curate the look of the film while you're prepping the movie.
Right.
We spent about 2 years prepping this movie to just curate that look, meaning what do the robots look like? What does the mall they live in look like? What does the res look? What do we call it? The prison where they're all held look like, and what are the rules? Why does technology function this way in this world? If you have an Ethan skate, are there also weird guns? Yeah. And you start expanding on. So all that stuff has to be conceived. Then you have your director of photography, your production designer, your VFX supervisor all contribute to the look of a piece of artwork. Yeah. And so we do what we call a keyframe per every sequence. So that keyframe has been contributed by us, by them. Everyone's contributed to that. And then that keyframe makes its way through the entire process, because now hundreds, if not thousands of people are going to touch that CG, that VFX. Yeah. And we've found historically that unless you have like one image that everyone can refer back to understand the color tone, the lighting, the color temperature, you'll get lost.
It's like the Wolverine image you have there,
Right.
We work in those kind of images a lot.
Right. So we'll say, this is the feeling of it. Everyone stay here. And then we have to sit in rooms for hundreds of hours with little laser pointers talking about, every iteration of every CG shot that comes in, the light from here, the color temperature's off. Know that, we added, Cosmo didn't, at one point he just had painted eyes, but we said we need to put little lights behind it so we can just feel the sense that there's a soul inside of the character, right? So they'll glow at certain points and then recede at other points. It's all of that layering that gets you to, a certain level of VFX.
Right. And how do you think that AI can be helpful? Because it's you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right.
We can't put our head in the sand.
Yeah. How can you use it as a tool to make it better, to make it easier?
Yeah.
Here's the most important thing about AI, right? It is like hundreds of other pieces of technology that have come before it. It's a piece of technology. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's incredibly powerful. It's intelligent. It doesn't behave like us. It's not us. It didn't skin its knee as a kid. It didn't have a childhood. It didn't, right? It's just an intellect, right? So the only way that it understands humans is by, trying to interpret thousands of pieces of information that it can call from the internet, right? So it's never going to make stories the way that we make stories. Its best use is in creating efficiencies and allowing people's imagination to be communicated to other people more clearly, because it can generate images, it can generate video clips, you can create tone samples, you can create, just as an artist, it suddenly makes you very adept at like Photoshop and image generation. And if, we don't draw, but I know plenty of directors. Tim Burton draws everything. I can't do that. But with certain AI tools, I can talk and it can create an image and I say, no, that's not it, And then I can communicate that to an artist who can then take that and go, oh, I understand what they're thinking. And now let me try and iterate off of that. So I think it's like anything. It's just a tool, but it's a tool that artists have to innovate. Mm-hmm. Because if we let corporations innovate it, they're gonna try to replace us with it rather than empower us with it. Mm-hmm. Because their version of cost efficiency is very different than an artist's version of cost efficiency.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
You can't run from it. You can't, because it's going to run you over.
But it's like look at the analogy is that it's like nuclear energy, right? You can use it to create a bomb, or you can use it to create electricity. We just have to make sure that we use it to create positive things, not negative things. So
it's exactly what you guys said in the beginning of this conversation. I mean, it's technology. It can use for good and also for bad. So we have to pick our fights, right?
And you have
Yeah,
to, if you don't
yeah.
muscle up and get in the fight, then you know your point of view is not going to be, you're not going to contribute at all to the direction that it takes, right? So you have to get in the fight. You know, there's no point in standing back or demonizing other people for engaging in the fight or having the conversation about it, because all you're going to do is get run over by a truck.
Let me just go back to what I was talking about, having Brazil in the movie. We know that like London, China before that, Australia before that, the film commissions were very strong, and you used to go to different places to shoot.
That's
Not
right.
just you, but the industry, Hollywood is an industry. Brazil never had this point yet. What do we have to build here to bring more movies to show like Rio, to show Amazon, to show Sao Paulo?
Yeah. It's two things.
Go ahead.
Well,
That's a good
it's
question.
rebate, right? Because that's the number one thing. A studio, when they're looking at where to go make a movie, is looking at where they're going to get the most money back, right? Because movies are expensive, right? So when
Yeah.
you hear large numbers for a film, imagine that, say, in the UK, you can get 30% of that money back. That's dramatic. That's significant. To a movie like Doomsday, that's beyond significant, right? To a Star Wars movie, that's beyond significant. So it starts
That's
with
why those big movies are based there.
Yeah,
That's it.
Starts with the rebate, and then sound stages, right? And usually it's a campus that has a lot of stages that can house a lot of movies and big crews and big films. Those two things are the number one drivers. The crew will come. The crew will be built around it. People will learn, right? Like that economy always shows up if there's a rebate and there are sound stages.
You shoot in Doomsday in Pinewood or
London and Pinewood.
Livingston?
Yeah, Pinewood.
Pinewood. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question actually. You worked again with a legend for me and for most of people, that is Alan Silvestri.
Yeah.
With music, I just love him. And I always wondered, because Alan have that style, that John Williams style.
Yeah.
The music is not just a background. The music, it got
It's a character. Yeah.
It's a character, right? It has sync with things. How you do this? I mean, you just edit a real, just a first cut of the scene and you give it to him and he works, or it's other way around. I always was curious about this.
I mean, Alan Silvestri is one of the greatest film composers ever. We agree. We can't believe we get the opportunity to work with him. He created an incredible score for the Electric State.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alan, he's a fascinating person. Like our favorite kind of collaborators, whether they be actors or composers or cinematographers or any kind of designers, we like people that really think about the movie as a whole. They're filmmakers. They're just thinking about the entire movie. And Alan is exactly that. Like we talk to him about everything. We talk to him about the whole movie. We talk to him about things that have nothing to do with music in the film all the time. He's amazing. He has amazing story brain and he gives us a lot of great input. So I think part of it is just he has a base. The base that he's coming from is very story sophisticated, very character sophisticated. He understands that stuff very well as a storyteller through music. But we get the opportunity to work with him because we've been working with him several times now, where we'll start talking about a story with him very early on. Just start developing the concept in his brain, let him play with it a little bit. And oftentimes what he'll do as we get closer and closer is he'll create a suite of music for us that sort of, it is not necessarily something we can lay against the movie exactly, but it creates a sense of feeling and tone for the film. It's using experimenting with the right instruments and the right, again, back to tone. You have to discover what the tone is musically. And so we go through a nice process together where we find that together. And then that becomes really useful to us. Again, even if it's not a piece of music that we're going to lay directly in the movie, we often play that for everybody on set. We play it for the actors. We play it for the designers because it gives them a feeling and a sense of tone. It's an amazing process working with him, as you can imagine.
And how about the music? Like you have The Clash, you have Oasis. The Flaming Lips.
A lot of personal
it's really
favorites.
good.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's just, again, you're putting things in that you have an emotional resonance with, that, you know, that you want to engage the audience with. Again, as Ann said, creates tone. Pratt getting out of a truck to Danzig tells you very quickly what kind of character he is, you know? And then the cues that come after that are all associated with him as a character. So again, you get he's from a slightly different period. Yeah.
You know, Hans Zimmer once said that music is more than 50% of a movie, and I completely agree. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Hans Zimmer, Ramin Djawadi, Alan Silvestri. To be really honest with you, Portals was one of my top one songs for like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
After Endgame, like I couldn't stop listening. And also the OST of Electric State was amazing because once I heard the first tone, I was like, it's Alan Silvestri.
Yeah.
I mean, but I also noticed that you worked with previous partners, right? You kind of assembled your Avengers. It's, I mean, Christopher Marcus and also Jeffrey Ford.
Yep.
So you have a writer and also an editor
And
that
Steve McFeely, who writes with
also,
Marcus.
you previously worked with them.
We
Right.
like collaborating with the same people over and over because we're a family. We have fun with each other. We get in rooms together. You have to spend a lot of time hanging out with each other. So you have to enjoy each other, you know? And so, you know, you go down the list, the crew, it's the same people we've been working with well over a decade.
Yeah,
Juliana
and this is a
Makovsky,
huge
yeah,
movie. So
yeah.
have you learned anything new that you want to put in new projects, in new movies? Like, what have you learned? What have you guys learned that you want to apply in future projects?
Future green
Well, we're hoping that like, we're really dialing in our approach to VFX and, you know, how to keep a consistency to them. It's hard. You know, one of the nice things about working with Netflix, and one of the things that attracted us most to working with them, is they don't date movies, which means you're not racing to hit a schedule. And when you're doing a giant movie with a lot of VFX, that can lead to poor VFX. Because you're racing. We got to get it out by this day. It's got to lock by this day. So when things aren't finished, it's still going out to the world. You know, there's something nice about the urgency, but there's also something that can be damaging in terms of the amount of time that you actually have to finish something properly. And they let us work on this movie till we were done with it. And when we were done with it, then we found a date and then we released the movie.
Yes, that's very different.
Very different.
Very difficult to think
Yes.
to have today, right?
Yes.
And we saw that the list of companies that you work with talking about VFX is a huge list.
Huge. Yeah. It's
and
everybody.
people all around the world as well.
Yeah.
I believe that people from India, China, Europe.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
We like to work with a global team. We make global stories for our fans around the world, and we want global contributors because it's, you know, every country is different, nuanced in different ways, and when you get that contribution from an international crew, you know, it's gonna find its way into the storytelling.
But like talking about back in the day, we used to have like a Star Wars movie would be 100% by ILM.
Yeah.
But today, is it impossible to have a movie
Impossible.
like this in one house?
Too many VFX.
Yeah, it's the amount of the portion of the movie that is being created through visual effects just keeps growing and growing and growing. So it's, you know, it's the amount of work there is massive. So I think that's primarily what drives having to work with multiple partners in order to accomplish the movie. Yeah.
And since you mentioned Netflix, I mean, you also worked with other streaming, right? I wanted to know, I mean, since you said that about Netflix, and we were really glad with it because it's different, can you tell us a little bit more about how is it to work with Netflix and what are the differences between working with Netflix and also with other streamings? You don't have to mention the streamings, but how is the experience of working with Netflix? I mean, I am a huge fan, so I just wanted to know how is it to work with them?
Yeah, I mean, look, our goal as filmmakers is like, we're trying to create a story and we're trying to connect it to audiences, right? So a lot of what we're looking for is a partner, whether it be a streamer or a studio or whoever it is, who believes in this movie and wants to finance it, because it's always a risk to finance a movie. And then also, who can help us connect it to audiences the best? And it's those two things. And Netflix really believed in this movie creatively. They responded to it very strongly, and they've been incredibly supportive. And also they give us a really unique opportunity to connect with global audiences. Netflix has an amazing global presence, a huge reach. And so we try to be like, releasing a movie is not something that Joe and I do. We're not distributors, right? We're filmmakers. So we can't control that part of the process. We can control the creation of the movie. So we try to be agnostic about how movies get to audiences, because somebody else is doing the work. We're not doing that work. So we try to be open to all the possibilities. And streaming has just there's been a great rise in streaming. It's been an incredible phenomenon for the past several years now. Certainly the pandemic supercharged the reach of streaming and the presence of streaming in everybody's lives. So part of it is just us going, okay, well, this seems to be a new venue for people to connect to storytelling. Let's experiment with that venue. Let's see what's possible in that venue. Let's see how the stories resonate in that venue and reach audiences in that venue. It's a bit of an evolving thing. The world is changing. Yeah. And we're just trying to, we're being experimental in terms of how we reach audiences.
And speaking of changing, there is a thing that I wanted to mention. Do you know that, do you remember when Thiago Romariz went to the set of The Avengers like a few years ago? You guys actually talked to a partner of us that works with us, that is Thiago Romariz.
Yeah.
And he talked to you about changes, about your new projects, and you said this right here. He asked you if you were going to make something like Avengers and if you guys would come with something like after Endgame, and you said that you were going to take a break for 5 years. 5 years. And come back and bring everybody together. X-Men, Fantastic Four, and to be really honest
Did we say this?
And
it's a quote.
I don't remember saying
it's
that.
a quote, okay?
I knew whatever you were going to say was going to be surprised.
He's nervous.
5 years from now. That was in 2020, and now we're 2025.
You really prepare yourselves, right?
I don't even remember thinking that back then.
No, yeah,
That's
but
what's so strange.
Speaking of changings, I just wanted to know, what did you guys learn within this 5 years outside Marvel and doing new projects, doing new things, and what you guys are going to put in your new projects, even regarding Marvel, but in general.
Those 4 movies that we did, frankly, were in like a 7-year time frame. It's one of the craziest runs you could possibly go on, right? Like, that was really intense. It was exhausting. We shot Endgame and Infinity War back to back with a few weeks off, and like 4 weeks off in between. He got pneumonia in between the two. Shit. Like they were physically demanding movies. You're literally, as soon as you wrap the movie, you're in post while you're prepping the next one. Then you're on a press tour for 6 weeks, flying around the world, talking to press every day for 6 weeks, back to set, onto the next one. And we did this over and over and over again for 7 years. And we just needed a break. Yeah. And like sometimes you have to just step away in order to see the path forward from there. What's fascinating about what we did with that, and we've always loved the Marvel experiment. We think it's really unique in movie history. Again, the 12-year-old in us, this would have been the greatest thing that ever happened, is we got to, get immersed in, a 20-movie arc and see an ending to that arc. What's compelling about these 2 new Avengers movies is they're a beginning. It's a new beginning. Yeah. So we told an ending story, now we're going to tell a beginning story, and then who knows where we'll go from there. Maybe it'll be another 5 years. But I think we just needed that time and perspective to figure out where it needed to go next. Yeah. And the only thing that brought us back was the right story.
I think also in that period that you're talking about, look, we got to direct things that were different and similar from the work we were doing in Marvel. We got to direct Cherry and The Gray Man and now The Electric State. But also with our company, Agbo, we were producing as well. Yeah. And we were getting to work with other filmmakers, which was really exciting. Joe and I, because we worked in television for a long time. And when we worked in television, we would direct, but we would also oversee some other directors who would come in onto the shows that we were producing.
Everything, Everywhere.
Yeah, so we got to do things like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And just like the ability to work with different filmmakers, see different voices, help other people find sort of a way through the system to create their movies. Like that's really invigorating.
We made a movie called Mosul, which was an all Arabic language film that Netflix financed, which was Really, I thought very admirable of them. As an action film set in the Middle East. So, we've had a lot of varied experiences. And we also built our company Agbo, which is now a technology-facing company because we believe the future of telling stories lies in technology. We have a new partner in Donald Mustard, who is creator of Fortnite. We have another partner named Dominic Hughes, who ran AI at Apple for a decade. And we're trying to bring together our own Avengers to figure out what the future is for storytelling and how best for artists to control where that future is going to go. It's well and good to get mad at like streamers and go, oh man, they built algorithmic storytelling and now we're stuck with that and they're dominating the media landscape. Well, just go figure out how to change it. Then build your own thing, instead of complaining, go find a path forward. We're trying to find a path forward again that we would be excited about and we think our fans would be excited about. And that's our mission at the moment. So we always have to balance, our commitment as executives of that company with our ability to tell these giant stories.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up, but I got one question regarding the future. During the pandemic, I was wondering, maybe daydreaming that during that time, the writers, the creators were building something new that we were not used to have anymore. Did you get any new kind of scripts to you? Did you build new scripts of new ways of thinking and doing cinema or series?
That's what we're all about right now. We're just most focused on how do we tell new kinds of stories using new technology in ways that haven't been done before. That's interesting to us. We just feel like it's time for something new. And we feel like Gen Z, when they become the dominant consumers, they've grown up on technology, immersed in technology in ways that no generation before them have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their tastes are going to be very different than all the generations that came before them. Their creator culture, their influence culture, their 2-minute TikToks, like they just are. Their brains are built differently, and I think they're going to drive innovation because they're different. And I think artists need to be ahead of that and understand where stories can go in like a fantastic way. How can they get even more immersive? Mm-hmm. The reason you're fans is because you want to live in the world. You take Star Wars and then you put it in your imagination and you go home. But what if you didn't have to just be in your imagination? That's why you go to a theme park, because now you get a 3-dimensional experience of that. But what if the theme park could come to you? What if you could spend the moments when you want to, in healthy ways, right? In your home, or connect with people around the world, having experiences that you normally wouldn't be able to connect with, again, because of technology or because of some new experience, right? And it engages you on an even more emotional level, on a more significant level, on a deeper level. You can only do so much with a 2-dimensional image projected on a screen away from you. What if that comes to you? Mm-hmm. That's where we think the next stories are going to be, and they're going to affect us in ways that we never imagined. Mm-hmm.
And really, just to wrap it up, you said that after you finish a movie, all you want to do is rest. So you're going to rest now, right?
No.
Sometimes that doesn't happen. Yeah.
So, talking serious, I know what you guys up to next.
Yeah.
And I know you can't tell too much, but what can you tell us about your next projects?
I mean, we're hard at work.
Yeah. And I will say, look, we even though we said that 5 years ago, I don't.
And you did. Really what it was we didn't know what our road forward was in the MCU. After we'd finished Endgame, we weren't sure about what it was. And what happened was a creative idea just came to us. Mm-hmm. And that ended up feeling like the right idea. So it motivated us to do it again. I'll say we feel like we have something fresh. Feel like we have a story that's like important to be told. We have an amazing group of collaborators again.
some old and some new. And we're very excited. It's a difficult movie. There's a lot of expectations on it because again, Endgame was that moment, it was 2019 before the pandemic, before that changed theater going. And so we know there's a lot riding on for people, for us, for everybody, moviegoers. What can this mean? What can this be?
Can it have the same level of energy around it? Can it pull people back into the theaters in the same way?
Who came up with the idea to bring Downey Jr. again as that guy?
That was Kevin. And interesting
Yes.
enough about that is that conversation was had a while ago. And then Robert tried to talk us into doing it, and we said no, weirdly, because we said we would come back. We just didn't have a story. We didn't have a way in, right? And so we were resistant for a while. And then one day, Steve McFeely, who's one of our key collaborators, said, I have an idea. And he called us to pitch, and we went, that's the story. That story has to be told. It's a really powerful story. And the one thing I will say about the movie is this. We love villains who think they're the heroes of their own stories. That's when they become three-dimensional and when they become more interesting. And when you have an actor like Robert Downey, you have to create a well-shaped, three-dimensional character for the audience. That's where a lot of our focus is going.
Yeah.
Sure. Can you just, to finish, invite people to watch Electric State?
Yep. Hello, everyone in Brazil. Russo Brothers here. Please go to Netflix now and watch The Electric State. You're going to love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. What a great
That was a great
conversation.
conversation. You guys are amazing.
It was great.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are fantastic. Yeah.